Hi there, my name is Amanda and today's video is going to be my Pan Those Eyeshadows update. If this is the first video that you're seeing from me, I will link my playlist up above so that you can catch up with my progress before jumping into this video. So I did continue to track my uses this past month, so I will go from the least amount of uses to the most amount of uses in each shadow. The first palette that I want to talk about is my Morphe Jaclyn Hill palette, and the shade that I was working on was Hunts. So I will put a picture up of where it was before, and this is where it is today. So probably not really able to tell here or in the close-up that there's much difference, and that is because I only used it twice this past month for a total of 8 times within the project. The major reason why I did not reach for this palette this past month was because of its size and because I was focusing on moving things out of my collection. I did find out soon after I posted my last update video that I was going to be moving, and so I did pack away the majority of my makeup and brought out makeup that I knew that if I focused on that, I could move it out of my collection so that I wouldn't have to move it with me. So that has been my main focus this past month, whereas this project is normally my main focus. This palette, because of its size and because of the shade that was chosen, this warm shade when I was working on moving out more neutral products, this just didn't have a spot in my routine, so this kind of took a back seat. But I think this will transition very nicely from summer to fall, so I have confidence that I will still continue to get good use out of this while it remains in the project. The next palette that I want to talk about is my Rearranged Yes Please palette, and the shade that I was working on was Louis, so I will put a picture up of where it was before, and this is where it is today. So again, probably not really able to see much of a difference. I did also use this shade twice this past month, and I was using it with the Morphe palette, so just like that palette, this palette was kind of put away for the majority of the month, and I've been kind of disappointed with this shade, and I think it mostly has to do with the colors that I have been using with it. I just feel like this shade kind of falls flat and blends in with the colors that I have been using with it. Even though I have been using it with a deeper matte red shade and like even with a brown, I just feel like it kind of fades away into the look and I feel like I'm wearing just one eyeshadow. But because of the way that I was using it and with the shades that I was using with it, you will be able to see a little flicker of pan in this matte red shade. And I have to say, I called it. Because I hit pan in this shade, I did decide that I am going to roll this shade out of the project for now. And I don't think I've mentioned that when I do that, when I roll out the focus shade that's within the focus palette, because I hit pan in a different shade, that shade is still eligible to be rolled in again. My only rule with it is that I can't roll it immediately back in, and the Louis shade I did use twice this past month for a total of 7 times within the project. The next shadow that I want to talk about comes from my Urban Decay Naked 2 palette, and the shade that I was working on was Chopper, so I will put a picture up of where it was before, and this is where it is today. So probably not really able to tell that there's much usage in there, and that's because I only used it 5 times this past month. If you've ever tried to hit pan in an Urban Decay shadow, these are very firmly pressed, so this is going to be in the project for a while. This shade is also a little disappointing. I've just not really found a way that I love to wear it. The way that I like to wear it the most that I have found so far is as a one and done shade, but I'm really having more trouble figuring out like what blush and what lip I like to wear with it, because my go-tos, which would be like this nude blush and this nude pink shade on me, they just don't work with this shade. I'm just finding that I feel like it looks more pink in the pan, but it comes off more bronzy on the eyes, but it's not like a typical bronze that I'm used to, so I'm just having a little trouble with it. The next palette that I want to talk about is my Too Faced Sweet Peach palette, and the shade that I was working on was Cobbler. So I will put a picture up of where it was before, and this is where it is today. So you can see that I did manage to hit pan in this shade this past month. I used it an additional 11 times this past month for a total of 26 times within the project. So now I have a better idea of how long it takes to hit pan in these Too Faced shimmer shades. I was also using this in the crease though, so I think that helped hit pan sooner. And you may have saw that I kind of drilled a hole into this shade, and that was because at about the 20 use mark with this shade, I was like, okay, how much longer do I actually have to hit pan in this shade? And so I decided to sacrifice this shade that I knew I was never going to use, let alone hit pan in. So I drilled a hole in here, and I genuinely thought this was going to take another month to hit pan in, but the pan came about a week later, so that was nice. Even though this technically has a pan in it now, I am not going to count it towards my pan percentage. The next shade that I want to talk about is my ColourPop Super Shock Shadow in the shade Truth. I do want to remind you that I brought this shadow into the project with a pan already in it, with the intention of finishing it up. So I will put a picture up of where it was before, and I will put a picture up of where it is today. So you can see that I did finish this shadow all the way up. I used it an additional 16 times this past month for a total of 19 times within the project. And I was using that shade those 16 times in a row. If I wasn't using it on my lid, I was using it as an inner corner highlight, I was using it as a brow bone highlight, I even towards the end started using it as a face highlight. I was determined to finish that shade up, and it was because, again, with moving, I don't want to take bulky packaging or any packaging that I don't need with me. It's nice to just have one more thing out of my collection. Even though it's something that I really truly enjoyed and loved, I have other things in my collection that can maybe not replace it, but will have similar effects. And then the last shade that was in the project came from my ABH Norabina palette, my Boring Gimme shade in the shade Base. So I will put a picture up of where it was before, and this is where it is today. So again, I did manage to hit pan in this shade as well this past month. I did use it an additional 20 times this past month for a total of 40 times within the project. After I finished the Super Shock Shadow in the shade Truth, I was using this to highlight the inner corner and highlight the brow bone. And once I started using that smaller, denser brush to do that, this pan came pretty soon after. So it was nice to have a cream to work on and just have one to focus on, because within the project I just use whatever's in my focus palettes. So it was nice to just have one to focus on, and I did also use this palette a few times just to take a break from my other shadows, so it was just nice. I also hit 2 bonus pans this month, and I hit them today with this look. So I want to show you those as well. So I did bring out my ABH Soft Glam palette. I just wanted to use it a little bit more. So the pans that I hit today are in the shade Fairy right here. There we go. That is what I have on my lids today, and also a little bit in my inner corner. This is one that had a dip in it when I was using bronze. I found that I liked wearing this as an inner corner highlight with that shade, so I'm really happy that this is now showing pan. And I also hit pan in Cypress Umber today. This is exclusively an eyeliner shade. I rarely use it to deepen the outer corner, but I do have it on as a liner today and hit pan in that shade as well. So this palette has 7 pans in it, so half of this palette is showing pan now. I don't know, I feel like this has potential to be a pan that palette, possibly. If you want to see that on this channel, I would be excited to film that, but I kind of don't really want to stray from pan those eyeshadows. So if you have ideas of how I could incorporate both the projects together, I would really love to hear your opinions in your comments down below. If you do the Pan Those Eyeshadows project along with Pan That Palette, I'd love to hear your advice. So now let's talk pan percentage and total pans in my collection. So I did declutter some eyeshadows from my collection, so the total pans in my collection and my pan percentage did change. So I decluttered a Super Shock shadow that did have a pan in it because unfortunately the texture it was done. There was nothing I could do. It was old. It was just time to let it go, unfortunately. I also decluttered a liquid eyeshadow that was burning my eyes when I was first putting it on, so that's just not something that I'm going to mess with. And I also decluttered that shadow. Again, it was older, so I just unfortunately didn't get to use it up in time. And then I decluttered 3 pressed shadows. I decluttered 2 very deep browns, which I really only use as liner shades. I also decluttered a very deep purple shimmer shade, which those shades are just especially unflattering on me. So it just wasn't going to get use out of my collection. It wasn't something that I was ever going to pan or use, so I did get rid of that as well. So I decluttered 5 eyeshadows from my collection. The total pans in my collection last month was 32, and now that I have hit pan in 5 eyeshadows but decluttered 1, I do now have 36 eyeshadow pans in my collection, and that brings my pan percentage from 10.6% last month to 12.1% this month. I do also want to say that the shade Truth that I did finish up and that I no longer have the packaging for, I think I earned being able to count it towards my pan percentage and towards the total pans in my collection for at least the rest of the year since I did finish it this year. Okay, so let's talk about the shades that were rolled into the project this past month. So I rolled in 4 new shades from 3 new palettes. So the first palette to talk about is my ABH Sultry palette, and I rolled in 2 new shades from this palette, which one I'm excited for and the other I'm not. So the first shade that was rolled into the project is one of my favorite shades within this palette, and it is the shade Rose Quartz right here. This is one of my least used shades within the palette because I've only used it a couple times, and it's just so beautiful that I got myself in that mindset that does nobody any good. That mindset of, I need to save this for a special occasion. I can't just wear it to wear it, you know? So this one's a little more bittersweet to work on, but I'm really excited to have an excuse to just wear it and work on it and feel pretty. And then the other shade that I rolled into the project, this was the 3rd shade that I rolled in. And this is one that I already would have worked on alongside Rose Quartz. And it's the shade Bloom. This shade is not the powdery formula that ABH is known for. This is definitely more hard pressed. It's very pigmented. It is a shade that is a little more challenging for me to work on. I think this one will be no problem. This one I think is going to be in the project for a long time. So the second shade that I rolled into the project came from the ABH Soft Glam palette. I promise you, this was pretty random. This was not me. And the shade that I rolled into the project is my least used shade within this palette. It is this shade Sultry right here. So this shade is it's too dark for me to like using it all over the lid, but I did recently use this for an Instagram challenge, and I used it alongside Rose Pink here, and I liked the look. I thought it was very pretty, so I think that's going to be the game plan, is using that look to help pan this shadow. And I think in the process I'm going to either hit pan or make very good progress with Rose Pink as well. This is not a shade that I want to work on right now, if I'm being frank. I like to wear warmer tones in the summer months, and these cool tones are not what I want to reach for as much. So I think the progress on this palette will be a little slow at the start, but then I think it will pick up a little later on in the year. And then the last shade that I rolled into the project, this is from a palette that I've been thinking about more, just because of wanting to keep out very small palettes while I am in the process of moving. And it is my smallest palette in my collection. It's my Huda Beauty Nude Light palette. So the shade that I rolled in from this palette is one of my favorites within it, and it is this very light pink shimmer shade. I can see this being like working really well with just like this light pink shade, and like that's it. Just put these two on really quick and be done. I think that's something that I'll look forward to in just doing something very simple with my makeup, because that's just what I've been wanting to do lately. So this is my new color story for the month of August. You can see that the color story has changed pretty dramatically again. Definitely veering away from all of the neutral warm tones and starting to bring a mixture back. And that concludes my Pan Those Eyeshadows update. I hope you will consider subscribing before you go, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!